guys. So this is a photography class?
Yeah.
Cool. So,
this is Heather Burton.
I'm sorry.
Middle school art instructor.
I'm a middle school art teacher,
and that's her illustrious son, the star of the day.
So he is actually the star of the book that I wrote. So, and it's written in first person with him narrating. So I figured he could read it to you guys today. So my master's degree is actually in illustration, even though I'm more of a fine artist now. But children's book illustration is a passion of mine, so I'm working on this children's book that I developed in graduate school, and I can talk to you about the process that it takes to go from an idea to what you turn into the publishers to try to get it published. You have options too. You can publish it yourself if you want it to stay exactly how you want it. Most of the time, if you turn it into a publisher, they're going to want to make significant changes to your book. So it depends on how personal the story is. Mine's pretty personal, but I'm kind of going back and forth between submitting it to publishers and doing it myself. So first I'm going to have Connor read the story to you guys. It takes a little while. I wrote it in iambic pentameter because I love The Cat in the Hat. And Dr. Seuss is a huge inspiration to me. He submitted his first children's book 28 times and had 28 rejections. And the 29th time, he got a publisher. And where would we be if he gave it up on the 15th time and we didn't have Dr. Seuss, right? So it kind of gives you an idea of just because one person isn't crazy about your book, maybe the next person will be. Okay, Connor, you want to read?
Sure. It was an ordinary day when Mom walked up to me and told me of Gramps and his ship Lady B. She said, "Your Gramps can spin all sorts of tales, but you use your head if you go to sail." So down to the docks we walked, Mom and me, talking of Gramps and the things I would see. I asked her again, as I asked her before, of the stories he tells should I just ignore? All the things that he says, as he tells them to me, "My son, it's your journey, you'll just have to see." So now hear my tale about the day my grandpa came and we sailed away. He always talked about the seas of blue, and he said, Come on, Connor, I'll show them to you." My mom gave me a hug like never before. She looked into my eyes, and I knew this meant more. Gramps asked her to stay, and she said, "Not this time. It's Connor's turn to make up his mind." We boarded his ship, and my eyes got wide. All those stories he told, everyone said they were lies. But here I could see that his adventures could be not just some stories that he made up to me. Could there be truth in the tales he had out at sea? Like Mom said on his journey, I'll just have to see. Lady B wasn't like any ship ever seen. She had engines and sails and a large wooden wing. Up to the wheel Grandpa took me to drive. "Check this out, Connor, my ship, she's alive. So many switches and buttons and knobs. How did he do it? Can he do all those jobs? You pull this red lever and push the blue knob, throw the green ship. Now, Seaman, hang on." The ship threw a jerk, and it bolted once more. At once we were off, but just wait, she's got more. I once had her going 200 plus on the Strait of Gibraltar. Oh, what a rush! In what seemed like a moment, we were so far away, I couldn't see land, and it was the middle of day. Gramps yelled his commands, and the ship took his cues. "Shall we go see my friends, Connor, out in the blue? My giant seahorses are not far from here. They'd love to meet you, if you do not fear." He looked at me with a sparkle in his eye. I searched his face to see some sort of sign. What was in store for us? What would I see? Could there be seahorses bigger than me? Gramps let out a yell and said, "Friends, all come near! Connor, the coolest, my grandson is here!" After a moment of silence, out in the sea sprang 3 golden seahorses with saddles and reins. My mouth hung open in an awestruck, dumb look. And Grandpa just smiled and said, "See, it's not all in the books." Gramps said to me, "Jump in, let's go for a ride." "No worries, Connor. I'll be right by your side." It took me a minute to take in the sight. I knew where they were there, but it gave me a fright. A moment of caution, then I thought, what the heck? And we both did a cannonball off of the deck. As we came up, we put our arms around their necks. The tags on their collars said Root, Tom, and Tex. Gramps yelled to our steeds, "Okay, boys, let's go!" And at once we were off on our adventure alone. We looked at the sky, and the islands flew by. We looked at the ocean, and the horses did fly, dodging and jumping and having a time. Gramps said, "Watch this, they can turn on a dime. Time to go back now, our boys need their rest." I nodded sadly, but I knew it was best. Back to the ship we headed. Then I saw the darkest of clouds that looked like a claw. The cloud scooped up all the light in its grip, and at once I knew we had to end our fun trip. As Grandpa told the horses to head to the ship, I saw his hand from the reins start to slip. He slid in the water fast as he flew. I gave him a thought. To save him, I thought, "Connor, it's up to you." I pulled on the reins, spun my seahorse around. I drove to my grandpa, who couldn't be found. I ordered my seahorse to dive in the deep. 2 trips below, and he was there in my reach. I plunged in the water and grabbed my Gramps' hand. We climbed on my horse, and we were off once again. He said, "See, you saved me, my brave little one. I'm proud of your courage, your valor, my son. You fearless example of stout-hearted fun have made this adventure today my best one. When we get home, you can tell what you saw, but don't be surprised when your friends say, 'Pshaw!' When you have to know is what we know what's true. And remember our wonderful day in the blue. We'll head back to port. Your mom will be glad to see what a darling adventure we had. I'll tell her about how you saved the day, but she won't believe you," I said anyway. "You should know," he said, as we pulled in the bay. "Your mom came along on a journey one day. She had an adventure when we went away. Maybe you'll hear of her tale one day." As we rounded an island and headed for home, what was left of the storm looked in the distance a dome. We made it alive, and I felt such great pride that I had done well on this adventurous ride. I could see my Gramps, how proud he was of me, and how happy he was to have me at sea. It didn't matter to me that others would doubt. I knew for myself what his story's about. There she was, as our ship pulled into port, walked and waving with a smile of sorts. What I learned that day I started to say to my mom as she asked with my voice as it cracked. We had an adventure, and I saved his life while riding a seahorse in a storm causing strife. You wouldn't believe it, Mom, in my story went on. She listened with care as she twirled my hair. After telling her everything, Gramps patted my back. She gave Gramps a wink that looked like a pact. "So, Connor, my son, would you do it again?" I said, "Can I really?" The question is when. I learned in the day, out on the sea, that nothing's impossible. It's all up to me. I could have been scared or just disbelieve. And I would have missed out on my day to achieve everything a kid could have wanted and more. Pirate ships saving lives and stories galore. I never assumed great tales are just lies. I'll make up my mind and use my own eyes. So what I know and can pass on to you. Trust in your heart and forget what you knew. Give a little adventure and try to and let the story be your reason why. Now when I go down to the streets, I can say I've had great adventures and will have no more one day. We'll have more one day. If you had the chance to sail off in the blue, what would you do if adventure were waiting for you?
So, the idea, Connor has called my dad Pirate Grandpa forever. My dad wears a bandana. He has a Jolly Roger flag hanging in his house. He's a little eccentric. So, the idea for this just kind of started coming to me over maybe a year or two, and I started writing some things down. And then when I realized I wanted to make it into a story, I chose a story he had told when we were kids that was a little bit of a tall tale, and then I just stretched it into a much bigger tall tale with the seahorses and everything. And then once you start doing that, a basic children's book is about 38 pages long. So you have to figure out how much text you're going to need and how many pictures you're going to need for that. So when I sat down to write this is probably the 10th revision, and I probably have one more to go to work out some of the rough spots in the text. And once you figure that out, you have to break it down by page and figure out where the pages are going to go. And this is thumbnails, so you kind of break it up into storyboarding and decide what scenes you want to show. And then once you have that established and you're really happy, I'll pass these around too, with what scenes you've chosen, you have to start shooting some reference. So
and the paintings up here are actually, some of them are in there, but she has more in New York where...
Yeah, I didn't bring them all out. So this is after he saves him from sliding in the ocean. This is the ship with the wings and the rockets. It actually comes out of the water so that it can go really fast. So you have to research stuff like that, right? Because if you put rockets on a ship, it'll probably just fall apart because the water resistance, right? So even though it's a children's book and it's an adventure, you kind of have to come up with some scientific realities, right? So then after that, my dad posed for me in all different ways so that I could use him as a reference. And then we lived in San Francisco at the time, so this is in the Maritime Park, the national park that's down by the wharf, Fisherman's Wharf, and that's the entrance to the bay there. Now I'll pass these around, you guys can look. So as far as photography goes, that's really important, right? I don't want, for artists, I use photographic reference for just about everything I do unless I'm painting something from life. And there are techniques that you have to use so that you don't get photographic distortion. So things look real and not like you're painting a picture, a photograph. Okay. The other thing that you have to do is develop your characters. So I have a couple character studies. This is Connor. He was much younger when I wrote this, initially, probably 7. So these are some ideas about what the characters look like. And then what you have to do is find a general flow for color. So you do, I have a few of my color studies. I paint in a muted palette, kind of a limited palette, so that when I do include bright things, it really stands out because I want your eye to go to that. So that's all structured and planned out. Those are color studies. And then this is a broader color study because just like the flow of the story, you want the flow of the images to go the same way. So it planned from warm to cool when the tragedy's happening, kind of where he's falling in the water. And then this is I have this painted out in New York, but this is the scene of him reaching down in the water. And there's a picture of Connor in there hanging from a like a swing set.
Wait, Mom, I was standing
So
on
that-
the horse.
So that he could, so that I could have that. Then, one very important process is actually making the book, kind of a mock-up of the book, and you stick the text in. Then I know how many pages I have to work with, and then all the drawing. And this is the initial version of the book in here, so I have, I'd have to rebuild it now with new text and everything else, but it puts where the text's going to go in relation to the pictures. And it's just a mock-up of the story.
So I was standing on the seahorse?
No.
What did I put on?
Yeah, just like when you're playing polo, right? So you put some stirrup.
Heather,
Yeah.
what are these again?
They're color studies.
Okay.
So I would do that for the whole book. Just basic sketches, just to feel the flow. After I've done the small thumbnail versions, then it's just you're working out the whole color plan. And it would start with, my images would start with a drawing and then move into the painting. These are actually kind of sketches of where I want to go with it. You always paint the pictures much larger than the book so that when they shrink it down, it can have the detail that you want it to have. And then, this is a very important thing, I have to get a current one, but it has all of the children's book publishers that you can approach for selling your work. Yeah. And then, what you would have to do is research each publisher, see what kind of stories that they publish, see what stories they publish, and see if yours fits in their kind of stable of authors and illustrators. Oftentimes, authors and illustrators are not the same person, but every now and then they are. So now I have to decide whether I want to let go a little and let somebody else tell me which direction to go with this, or if I want to just build it completely myself and publish it.
What would that involve, building it yourself?
It's a lot easier now than it was because you can get your own ISBN number. So you can sell it on Amazon or take it to Barnes & Noble. And sometimes I think it's easier. It's a lot more expensive of an option because you have to pay for all the books, like the first run. There are publishing houses now, self-publishing houses that will print on demand for you. The market has changed a lot where you don't have to order thousands and thousands of copies.
What's a minimal order?
I think you can actually just go one at a time now. The price is higher, obviously, but there are other ones that it's just all over the board. Like, it just depends on the publishing house and how much you're willing to spend and what kind of quality you want for a book. I'd want a hardcover book, I think. I know there are a few publishers on the island that people have told me about, and I haven't researched any of that. So I'd much rather go with a local person and maybe give my backgrounds more of a Hawaiian feel now that we're here. Any questions, guys?
So when you say add a Hawaiian feel, would you have to redo the paintings?
Well, I'm going to have to do that anyway, because this ship and this ship, this is more my final kind of idea, and this was my initial idea, but this wouldn't work with the engines on the masts, because it just break, right? So it's all a development process, and painting the pictures and stuff kind of just gets some ideas worked out, and then when you find out some of the ideas don't work, you just move on and change it. So it's a huge process, but it's very enjoyable, you know, especially when it's your own creation. I think the time Oh, sorry. It's Pirate Grandpa's Great Adventures. I want to do a series. So this is the Tale of the Giant Seahorses.
Have you thought of having Connor include a little disc with his voice?
That's an
Telling the
excellent
story.
idea. That's a really good idea. This
Thank
is his
you,
first
college
time
friend.
reading it, so I know. This is his first time reading it, so he did pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really good.
I get a little choked up when I read it, so he's good at it. When it's really personal, sometimes that happens, right?
So how many hours have you put into this project
Already,
already?
I really couldn't even guess. It's a lot. It's probably a couple hundred hours, I would say. Between photographing and so as photography people, you guys could help illustrators and stuff by being able to set up and shoot.
Oh, and you should tell them what this is about, because that's just a horse.
So there aren't really giant seahorses, right? So I used this rodeo picture to show how somebody might be hanging off of a horse.
And then some seahorses.
He's very intimately connected to the project.
He's a great salesman, actually.
Yeah.
He's better than I am at that. Any other questions, guys?
For you students either going into AP Art next year or potentially considering it in the future, welcome to what it's about, because it works very much the same way. As she was talking, I was realizing that. In that you're working with a series, you're coming up with a theme, you're developing that theme. The storyboarding she showed you would be incredibly productive for you to do at the beginning. So the idea of working with your color palette, all of the things she talked about are essential for developing a thematic series also. Any other questions, you guys? Well, thank you, Heather.
Thank you so much. Fantastic.